Hey everybody, I'm Rousseau. I do a little work here and there. You are watching Raconteur Weekly, the monthly show where I usually talk about the things that happened in the past few weeks and some of the things that might be happening in the weeks to come. But as not a whole lot happened last month, we're going to try a sort of return to form with this, a small project. See, I got this a while back, and no, I did not pay $14.75. This was purchased in the period right after the release of Age of Sigmar, so you could find a lot of these Warhammer Fantasy things for 50%, 60, 70, or in some cases I saw 85 or 90% off. So I don't remember what exactly I paid for this. It has been sitting around for a while. But the idea is I need a band for the halftime shows in our Blood Bowl games. And as you know, those games can run a little long, so it's nice to have entertainment there in the middle. Anyway, this Vampire Count's Tomb Banshee is going to act as the lead singer for our group. And I do have a few other miniatures that feature instruments or, what have you. But, this is one area where you do sort of have to pick your battles and take what you can get. We have 6 pieces here. Piece number 1 being most of the body. Number 2 being the head and a little bit of hair. 3 being a bit more hair, 1 arm, a dagger that we will talk about in just a moment, and half a dress. Then 4 is the other half of the dress, 5 is the front of the hair, and 6 is the supplied base. Of course, the first step with any project like this is to separate each of these pieces from the sprue, and I am using some flush cutters for that, though I feel it is important to note that a lot of the little pieces in here are fairly fragile, so you really don't want to just go clipping away. Not to mention that flush cutters like this are not without their own set of issues. So what I like to do, if at all possible, is to clip out large portions with the pieces so that when I do get closer, when I go in to do that detail work, there won't be this tension of multiple connection points pulling on the piece and risking some sort of subsurface damage. And this is sort of a big deal, but sort of not a big deal. Kind of depends on how you put paint on the mini. But, better safe than sorry. So first I'm going to clip all of those pieces out in rough form. And I will say, if you're handy, you might hold on to these empty sprues, because you never know when you're going to need weird shaped angular post things. And these things do work well for rubble, but it's whatever. Now the next step, like I said, is to go in closer and try to get as flush a cut on these things as possible. And with something like the base, that is easy because you can line the flat side up with the flat side, though on some of the other pieces we'll see that can be a little more difficult. Anyway, point is, you clip and you want a little bit to be left over because you can shave that off and make it extra smooth. What you don't want is for there to be a pit there, because then you're going to have to shave down the entire rest of the side or put some sort of filler in there to make it smooth. So, more work. This is less work, but probably still more work than you really need to do. Here, because this is such a simple shape, because I do have a cutting mat, and because I am certain that I can keep my fingers away from this blade, I will tempt fate and use it to demonstrate that you can get some fairly smooth cuts. So, is the razor blade necessary? No. Is it recommended? Also no, because already here in the shoulder I'm running into some problems. And, a big flat blade like this is not going to work, which is why I have a specialty tool. One that I made myself, one that you might be able to make yourself, and that we might talk about at some point in the future. Right now, though, we're talking about preparation, which in this case entails the removal of all of those little bumps and of any mold lines, of which here there are some. So I think you know the score, and I also think watching this is pretty boring. So we will zoom through it as quickly as possible. You'll get the idea, and I actually think it's a little better this way, because with a little pencil scraper tool, you can really see those shavings build up. So we do that, we clean up the pieces one by one, till we get to that dress, arm, knife, hair piece. And to make this person a lead singer, we're going to have to do 3 small modifications to this one part. So 1, we're going to have to make the pommel quite a bit larger. 2, we're going to have to get rid of this cross guard. And 3, we're going to have to do something at least to the end of the dagger portion here so that feasibly we could say that it is the hair. Then this dagger will be a microphone, and that's all we got to do. Most people don't even see the dagger, so I don't think most people are going to see the microphone. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's just a fun little detail for anybody that's really interested. So you got to know the hardest part of this, and the part that we're most likely to mess up is the curving of the tip of this dagger. So my first thought was just wave a soldering iron real close to it while holding the hair in such a position the gravity would just cause that dagger's tip to curl right over. And I tried this for a while and it only worked on the tip, which is not at all what I'm looking for. So you know what, I'll take the plunge and just curl right over. Yeah, so that's good, and maybe one more good. Nice. And with a little scraping, I think that'll look alright, but I think it would look even better, really because it's satisfying and dangerous. And, well, let's give it one more. Yeah, wave it past it a few times just to smooth out the surface, and then it's time for more scraping. This time to take off the cross guard, because that is one dead giveaway that this used to be a dagger. So at first it is just a matter of scraping, but at a certain point it's going to be good practice to scrape out all the little grooves where the hair was and continue them out to the places where the hand guard also was. This can take some time and patience. The other thing you have to worry about are hard edges, and things like that are no problem with the right tip on your tool. Take care of the hand guard on the other side and finish scraping in those hairlines until at last you are ready for the little poof that will tell people that this is a microphone. So I'm sorry I have to show you the finished product, but I will explain. This is super glue and baking soda. So the idea is we had a little bit of a bump on the pommel, and I put a little drop of super glue and hung it just off of that before dipping it in some waiting baking soda. Repeat that 2 or 3 times and you'll have something that looks about like this. And once it's cured, you can scrape parts off or do whatever else you need to do to make it look right. But yeah, that's it. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity to mess this up, and I mean, we've barely even started. So these are all the pieces, and I'm not going to waste your time showing me gluing them together. We'll just get all of these pieces out of the way before bringing back in the finished piece. Or, you know, sort of finished. It isn't finished. If we turn it around, you can see there's a nasty line here on the back. And I'll fix that much in the same way that I fixed the mold lines at the beginning. That is just with a lot of scraping, though not with the angled tool that I was using before, but instead with a rounded version. So we'll just skip to that, and you'll notice that I did not eliminate the line completely because, hey, there probably would be a seam there, and that is the sort of detail that you can't pay for. So, you know, do it, don't overdo it. Let's see a spin around. And yeah, that's pretty good. Microphone, all that, it'll work. Of course, now it's going to need a little bit of paint, and I don't usually explain any of this, especially the painting process, but I do things a little different, so we might as well. So first, I will say I don't mess around with primer. I think it's too thick, so I go with the process that I'm outlining here, where first I go over the whole mini with black acrylic. And this is just standard black acrylic paint, likely of low quality, really just whatever comes in the biggest tube. And after I've gone over the whole thing a couple of times with very, very thin coats, I go over that with a very, very thin coat of a gloss varnish. Now I will say in some cases this does rub off the black paint underneath, but as long as you are real ginger, most of it should be fine. You can put a little black paint into the varnish and all you end up with is a black matte varnish, which is fine. After the gloss varnish is on and dry, which should be pretty quick if you put on thin enough coats, we're going to put on another coat of the black acrylic, and this will fill in any thin areas and give us pretty good base to work from. So the rule of thumb here is to just paint it until it doesn't look shiny anymore. So yeah, not that tough, but you do sort of have to take your time because after all, wet paint looks like gloss. So once that is done, we're going to try out a product that I'm testing that is a 50% transparent white, which, you know, it's kind of an interesting thing. And I'm just going to do a wet sort of dry brush all over this thing. So I've got a tissue here. It's not really the best thing for dry brushing, but it'll do the job. And the point of this is just so we can see all of the details. I'm going to want all of this to be a lot lighter in the end, but we can work on that as we get closer to the end. First, we need to see all the details. After that, I'm going to forget the dry brush and just apply this transparent white to anything that I want to be a lighter color. So most of what I want to be lighter is cloth, but also skin and any other element that I just want to stand out. So I tend to do this a lot. That is, I sort of paint the minis in grayscale first, and then I decide on the color schemes. And after you've done this, it's easy to use very thin coats of paint to get all sorts of different shadows and highlights. So we'll still do washes, we'll still do some dry brushing at the end, but if we do this right, then it won't actually be that much work. So let's talk about the main feature here as far as colors are concerned, that being the color that I'm going to use for all of the cloth on this miniature, and it is this rather common looking light purple. But if I bring in a black light, you can see that there's something special about this purple. I think if I turn off one of these lights, then yeah, you can see it on here. Parts of it glow white in the light, and when you turn the light off, they glow green for just a second. So that's pretty cool. And again, it's just a little extra thing that most people aren't going to notice. And this purple, for the record, is made with a opaque sky blue, a transparent burgundy, and this folk art trusted quality glow in 2716E neutral. So that's what we're going to start with, and we'll mix it right here. And again, we're going for very thin coats, so you can expect the first coat to go on kind of streaky, but with additional coats it'll get more and more even. Here partway through I will pause to see how well this is glowing, and the answer is, well, not incredibly well, but since the glow paint is mostly transparent, I think I can put a few layers just of glow on the outside of this. And with a single coat of that, we'll see how it does. And the answer this time is very well. So I may end up putting more coats of this on later, but for now this is promising. Though I may want to invest in a blacklight bulb because this LED isn't really doing the trick all the time. So maybe, yeah, another coat of glow is in order, mainly because I know I'm going to darken this purple up later, and the glow paint does brighten it considerably, but with just a bit of that. You can see even here in normal light, you get this nice ghostly sort of patchy glow. So that is nice, and with the lights out, it looks just as good, if not better. So with that looking pretty good, we will move on to other color. And here I'm going to cover a lot of real estate with this chocolate bar, and I'm going to do this thin and watery. So first all of the hair, then all of the armor bits, and finally select portions of the base. Then I need something for skin, so I'm just going to mix that chocolate bar with the transparent white. And that is a decent skin tone for now, because again, this is going to get a wash and then everything will change, but definitely good for now, just as blocked in color. Then I'll get a bit of white and just dot in the eyes and mouth, or not in the back of the throat, but there's some teeth in there, and this is a bit messy, but again, it's fine, we'll fix it again later, but a little fixing now wouldn't hurt. And there we've got way too bright but blocked in color. So again, we'll test our ghostly glow, and that's looking pretty good, though I can't imagine the wash will help. So about that wash, it's pretty simple. I mean, personally, I use a transparent black, which is then watered down, and I just lazily rub it all over before rubbing it off of the high spots. And it does muddy things up quite a bit, but in my case, that was to be expected. So once I've got that on, and once I've got it dry, I'm going to come back in with another white dry brush. And this is with the transparent white, and it's sort of a wet dry brush, but it's going to start bringing out the higher points again. It's not going to hit the lower points. Those are going to stay dark. But I've got to do this because I'm going to come back in with more color, and I'm going to do most of that real watery. So I'm going to need something light so that some of that color will show through. Most of it is going to get lost, but that's fine. So at this point, I think it's looking pretty good, which is why, as a preventative measure, I'm going to put on one more thin coat of gloss varnish. I do have a bit more work to do, but I like the work that I've done and I want to preserve it. Some of the parts coming up, I might put a little too much stuff on, and I want to be able to take a wet brush and just rub it. So another coat of gloss varnish, another coat of glow paint, just in case really, and let's see what it looks like. And the answer this time to what it looks like is a little muted, a little muddy, but pretty alright. I'd say it could use some work, but pretty alright. The microphone looks good, and the purple looks really nice, even if it isn't glowing. But there's not really enough contrast in the colors here. Everything is just, the same brown, the same purple. But it's also really shiny. So we got to take care of all that. We got to add in just a bit more color. We got to bring the highlights back. I mean, you could leave it here, but we're not going to leave it here. So for most of my finishing touches, I got these 4 things here. We got some more of our transparent white, a light brown I think is called Nutmeg, a GW color Bugman's Glow, and that transparent burgundy from before. If you don't have these colors, that's fine. Really, you can just use whatever you want. Personally, I'm using just whatever I found. So first, I'd like something metallic on here, and I'm going to make this armor bronze, or whatever armor is made of. So it's sort of a dark brown right now, and I'm going to mix this light brown with the transparent white and just go for an overall light coverage. Then I will take a little bit of copper, and very sparingly, again like a wet dry brush, just put on some of that copper. And a lot of this is still going to get covered up later. Then for our hair, I'm going to mix that light brown with the burgundy and just a touch of burgundy. And we're only going to really try to touch the highest portions of the hair with this. And after that, I suppose we might as well mix in a little bit of the white and just hit the tops. Then we're going to have to do something about the skin, since it is fairly close in color, or at least in darkness, to the cloth that's right next to it. And for that, I'm going to mix a bit of the white into the Bugman's Glow. And we're going to do the same sort of wet-ish dry brush. And again, all of this will dry a little darker than it looks, but we'll hit that whole arm and then the face and neck and chest. And not forget the other hand. Then hey, how about a lighter version of the copper? Just in some places. And then, Terranscapes did those videos on verdigris recently, so in one video, just in a second, I'd like to do my version. So I'm going to take that color in the middle and I'm going to add this sky blue to it, and that sort of makes a grody purple, sort of a gray purple. And then I'm going to mix this watery light green in with that, and we get sort of an olive drab, then a lot of water into that, and I don't know, a little tinting black, just a dab to darken it up a bit, and I'll just put that all over, it's whatever. Then a bit of watery tinting black, and we're going to use that for like panel lining, because the verdigris that I've seen gets to be a dark color wherever water stands or wherever water runs. So we don't want to spend too much time with this, but put some lines on it where you think it might run, and keep it dark in the recesses. I just sort of muddle it around to make it look like there's a lot more detail there than there actually is. And after that, I don't know, the base. I guess I'll take just a little bit of white and go over the rocks on the base and the little skull on the base, just to brighten it up and get it ready to go. After that, a couple of matte clear coats, and I think I'm going to call it done. So let's see another spin around. And yeah, I'd say that's much better, much improved from the last version. Parts of it are more or less shiny, but that's whatever. It looks fine, there's good separation between the colors, and I guess the microphone could be a little darker, but I don't really mind for a detail that nobody's gonna see. So I think it looks good, and I'll stop there, but let's go back to the other camera, since on that one we can see the glowing effect a little bit better. And yeah, there it is. You shine the light on it, and it glows. And then when the light turns off, it glows for a second after that as well, which of course is unnecessary, but cool, it's cool. So I guess we'll try that from a few more angles. And again, really, I do need to invest in a black light bulb. I've seen them and they're not that expensive, but I'll get the lights back on and say, yay, there it is. One project checked off, complete. And I've got plenty of more projects just like this, and hey, a lot more projects that are completely different from this. So stay tuned, there will be cool stuff. I guess it's just you never know when it's going to be done. So until next time, this has been Raconteur Weekly on Rousseau Works, and I'm Rousseau, out.